Monday night at 8 p.m. and that means we are back with our question and answer series for expecting new and veteran parents. I know that a lot of you have been watching, sending in questions. We appreciate your support, and I hope you have enjoyed the lineup that we have had. And I'm really, really excited for our guests in one moment. Just in case there's any confusion about tonight, I made a mistake in promoting the order of our guests. So while I am very excited, hi, thanks for joining for tonight's guest. It may or may not be the person you were expecting, but we have sorted out all the confusion. It was all on my end. We are going to have Meenal Lele, hopefully I said that right, with us tonight of Lil Mixins. And next week, anyone who is looking for Maria Sanders Parent Coach, she's going to be with us next week because summer brain, I kind of messed it all up.
It happens to the best of us.
Right? We're all moms. We're all in summer. We're all on the tail end of pandemic making this work. But thank you for being super flexible and helping me fix my problem today. I reached out like, oh my gosh, I said it was you tonight. Can you do tonight? And you could, which was amazing. So thank you very much. I'm super excited to have you here tonight because I want to learn everything you have to tell us. This is not an area of expertise for me, but I think it's something really important for our audience to be aware of. So I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I'm going to ask you questions and I'm going to let you tell me all the things. Anybody who's watching, if you want to submit a question, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'll try to keep an eye on that. But welcome very much. Meenal is a mom and an entrepreneur, the founder and CEO of Lil Mixins, and she is on a mission to end food allergies, which affects currently 40 million Americans, including your own son. So tell us a little bit about how you got started on this journey, and then there's a bunch of things we want to know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I really got started on this, I guess introduced to the food allergy space when my older son developed food allergies. And it was like such a shock, right, to us, because all the things that you think about, right? There's no family history. We did everything by the book, and we're really frustrated. And then right after he developed his allergies, all of this crazy data came out that completely inverted everything that people thought they knew, and they knew it, but because they'd never actually studied it. And so when they went to study it, they realized everything pediatricians had been telling parents was like totally wrong. And instead that you can actually train children to not develop an allergy, basically. Like you can feed them these foods actively during a very specific time frame in their development, and then they won't develop a food allergy, or they're 80% less likely to develop a food allergy, which, again, like for anything, anyone would take an 80% chance.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so I think like most of us, kind of out of necessity, you had to learn more about this for your own son, and then there must have been a moment combined with your impressive background, which I skipped over, but I know that I'll let you tell it if you want to. You have pretty impressive professional backgrounds.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been sort of in the medical device industry and the medical space for about 20 years now, and I was on the founding team of an orthopedic company, and then after that got acquired, I bought by a bigger orthopedic company. Then I left to start a vascular medicine company. And so, I think in these sorts of spaces, I have a dangerous amount of information, or a dangerous ability to go look up things myself, right? So after doing this for a while, and my role has always been actually running clinical studies. So when this clinical study came out, I was able to actually really appreciate just how groundbreaking it is, and how hard, like what it would have taken, and how conclusive this data was, right? Because the level of science that they put into this, like thousands of children in a randomized study, meaning half the kids were told to do one thing and the other half were told to do the other, and they made sure that the groups were the same. So the only thing different was how you were feeding these children in this very specific time frame. I could really appreciate how intense that was. It was also really frustrating because one of the things I tell people is like the study came out 1 week after my son's first ER visit, And what drove me crazy about it is I know from having published articles in journals myself is that typically there's like a year-long backlog or more. So this data was actually well known before my kid was born, right? But then it didn't get to me in time.
Right. Yeah, super frustrating. So my son is 11, and I feel like when he was coming up, so to speak, the recommendation was to wait on everything. Wait as long as you can to introduce all these things. And that's what we did. And unfortunately, food allergies is one of the few things we haven't had to struggle with. I got out of that one, not much else. But I can only imagine, how frustrating that must have been. And you mentioned a chemical engineering degree as well. So you were able to somehow put all of that together, plus your mom initiative to say, I want to create a product or a line of products that would be a way for families to follow this advice to introduce early. And I want to know about all the products towards the very end. But can you first, let's back up a little bit. Why, you mentioned how prevalent they are. So food allergies currently affect 40 million Americans. That number kind of blew me away. Can you speak a little bit to why food allergies are so on the rise?
Yeah, it's actually a kind of a complicated thing. Interestingly, I wrote a book about this because I was frustrated during COVID about how little scientific understanding people have, and it's coming out fall next year. Because
that's impressive. I get frustrated during COVID and I drink a glass of wine. Write a book.
Yeah, but so I say that to not I wasn't trying to pitch the book. I was actually trying to just say that it's complicated, right? And what we know definitively is that if you think about food allergies, eczema, asthma, in many ways, like I don't want to overstate this exactly, but in many ways they're kind of the same disease, right? They're a specific type of immune reaction that's happening in different parts of your body. Right? Because you can have, like, a good example is to a cat, you can have nasal allergies, you can get asthma from a cat, or dust is another one, right? And some people will break out in skin hives, and so they're all sort of the same thing. So what we know is going on, if you think of it that way, right? When you think of it that this is something deeper, it's systemic, rather than just about the food, you realize that, well, something must have changed inside humans' bodies, right? But we know that that's not genetics. Like, genetics can't change in 20 years. That's just not how it works. So, well, where does that leave us, right? So we know, for example, that the microbes that live inside, and the other thing about this is these diseases are developing so early in children's lives, right? So if children are developing a food allergy at 6 months and the only food they've eaten up until that point is breast milk, like, there are not that many things that happen to the kid, right? They've been held by their mother. They're not crawling around. They're not going to school. There's so few things that have happened. So that limits us to basically air pollution, chemicals and things in our environments, and the changing nature sort of how we're born and our breast milk and how clean we keep ourselves. And all of those three things, the air pollution, the cleaning, and how we treat ourselves, can drastically disrupt the microbes that live on us and in us. And it can, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing, because these microbes that live inside us actually make up our barrier. So when you think about your skin, your skin is a barrier between the outside world and your blood system, for example, right? And so when you get something like eczema, there's a break in this barrier. Well, what's causing that break, right? So we know that the molecules, like the things that make our skin feel soft and things, some of that comes from us, some of that actually comes from the bacteria that live on us. And so we don't really know which one is happening first. Is it the us that's becoming inhospitable to the bacteria, or did the bacteria shift and they're sort of breaking down our barriers? But we do know, we have this definitive data now that people's skin barriers are breaking down, their lung barriers are breaking down, their gut barriers are breaking down. And so for your immune system to have a reaction to something like pollen or a food, it has to get somewhere it's not supposed to be, right? Because if a dust particle just settles on your skin, your body ignores it, it's still outside me. But if that dust particle gets inside your skin through a cut or through the tear of eczema, or through you breathed it in, but you have a weak barrier inside your throat and your lungs, now your immune system's angry because it's not supposed to be there. And so we know that these food particles and things are actually crossing the barriers. And so that barrier dysfunction and the microbial disruption. Again, those kind of go hand in hand. That's actually the cause of it.
Gotcha. Okay. So that being said, then, what is it that is there anything we can do about that, which is obviously where this study and the research comes in?
Yeah, it's a long thing, right? Because we do know, for example, interestingly, when it comes to food allergies, you have this window in which your baby's immune system is learning. And so we're all pretty comfortable, I would think, with the idea that like a baby's brain develops in the first 3 years of their life, right? And we know that in those first 6 months, it's like an asymptotic curve where like a ton of development is happening. And then it slows down. And by 3 years, you're like, most of your brain has been developed. And your immune system is actually really similar. It doesn't exist when you're born, and it's rapidly developing. And just like your brain, where, the baby sees like upside down at first, and then like all these other weird things are happening, right? Like the eyes like kind of correct themselves, and then the motor skills develop, and then, right? So if you think about it just like that, your immune system is kind of doing the same thing, where there's this window kind of between 6 months and 12 months approximately, but it seems to be the biggest chunk of it is 6 to 10 months old. So right as babies start solid foods, not coincidentally, right when they're starting to move around and they've learned to put things in their mouths with their hands. So right at that time, the gut immune system starts to be like, hey, teach me what I'm supposed to do. It's a training time. And so it's exactly that window that you need to be feeding the baby things like peanuts, walnuts, cashews, eggs, milk, soy, sesame, all these foods that they're common allergens, and you can actually train their body. You get this window for the baby to be taught what's a safe food that our people eat. And if you miss that window, and the body's never seen that, and the baby has this kind of like leaky barrier, it's going to get mad, right? And that's why those allergies develop. But if you train it, so there's this concept of like, if you're gaining oral tolerance, at the same time you're getting all this exposure, you can actually teach the immune system to just kind of stay calm. Yeah. Right. And so that's really, and so what's challenging about that though, is it sounds like, all right, straightforward, right? But when you, again, like just like with your brain, you don't teach, like you don't talk to your kid one time and say like, use your words. And then they're like, oh, got it. Okay. Use my words. Right. It's a repeated, we do this over. Yeah. It's like we do this over and over, and thousands of reminding, pick up your socks, right? And it's the same thing with food tolerance. The baby has to eat these foods like every week to kind of properly train their body to tolerate them.
The baby a peanut. Or
exactly. Yeah, you can't really feed them these foods. And then on top of it, you're supposed to do it every week, and not just like one food, but many foods, right? And so that's really where, that was really the problem we're trying to solve, right? Like if food exists, but our Lil Mixins dietary supplements are really asking the question, well, they're saying like, it's great that doctors came up with this, but if an average parent can't do it in their house, then right. Like, what's the point, right?
For sure.
It's like, good for you over there,
That's awesome. So you were not only able to understand the research, but to see that it would be a problem for parents to implement that at that age on a daily basis. Right. So for families that may be watching that aren't familiar at all with what Little Mixins, is or offers, can you talk a little bit about how you solve that problem?
Yeah, sure. So we have a line of dietary supplements, and they're basically foods that come in powders, and we sell them, in boxes and in packets. And the idea of these sorts of things is that you take one of these, you put it into baby's food. It's completely safe for a child as young as 4 months old. Everything, that's where the chemical engineering degree comes in. They've been designed so that they won't clump, they can't choke a baby, they blend into any food because they're super water absorbent in that way, so they adhere or stick to watery foods. You could sprinkle it on food or anything, and it'll just sort of like, you do have to mix it in, and it gives you, kind of what the study showed, the exact amount, right? Because that's the other thing is when you think about when you think about a piece of chicken or something, right? If somebody said to you, eat 6 grams of chicken protein, you'd be like, I don't know what size piece that is though, right? Like, cause you're not talking about the weight of the chicken, you're talking about the protein in it. And it's the same thing with peanuts or anything else, right? So if somebody says, well, eat 2 grams of egg protein, you're like, what does that look like? And so we just basically do it for you and pre-proportion it in a shelf-stable way so that you don't have to do any of that thinking. And again, it's like, look, I've been there. when it's so easy. I think the challenge for most parents is that the first time you have to give your kid peanut butter, you're like, oh, got it. I'll take this peanut butter, I'll heat it, I'll thin it, I'll spoon feed it to the baby. And then you have 7 other foods to deal with every other day, and then do this every other, and you're like, I'm not doing that, but it's really important, right? Like, think about the level of change we've put into our lives for our children to avoid a disease that has like a 0.02% chance of affecting them. This has you have a 10% chance today of developing food allergies. 10%, right? Like, that is orders of magnitude higher, and yet it's just as much effort, right? And so, but we have to make that easy.
Yeah, absolutely. We need easy. We need easy, definitely, under these circumstances. So let's say that I'm a mom who, just came across your product, and I'm already feeling like, whatever, nervous, overwhelmed. Am I purchasing one product that is it like 7 different things I need to introduce my baby to 7?
So yeah. So actually, well, what I wanted to show you is, what date is it? In about 1 month, we're launching a brand new product that actually is seven foods. And you'll be the first to see it. It's 7 different foods, so it takes care of it all in that same sort of daily, it's the daily mix, because you do 1 a day. But it takes care of it.
Easy.
yeah, exactly. It just like really takes care of all the thinking. So it takes you through peanut. All the clinical studies actually used a hard-boiled egg, which is really interesting, is that if you feed children raw egg powder or scrambled eggs, they're 15 times as likely to have a reaction to that as an infant as a hard-boiled egg, because heating, like we know with all foods, right, heating changes the food. It makes it easier for our bodies to digest it. That's why we cook. And so a hard-boiled egg is actually the safest way. But again, this is just time. Like, it sounds easy, but it's actually 30 minutes of work to like get a hard-boiled egg, cool it down, like get it to your baby. And so we will be the only people that have a powdered hard-boiled egg, as weird as that sounds. And also all of our foods are real, right? They're dietary supplements because they're just a small amount, but they're just pure. That's it. The only ingredient is like, if it says cashew, that's it. There's only cashew in it.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like you're really eliminating all the guesswork, which is, I think, part of what would feel intimidating about this to a parent. Even if they get the need to introduce early, they're going to be maybe a little skittish about the amount and how often and all of that. So that's excellent. So what about a parent watching, and if anyone watching has questions, feel free to put them in the comments, that would say, but aren't allergies genetic? That's what I've always heard. I know you mentioned in your family that was not the case, but what does
they're just not genetic. I don't know how to explain, like, I don't know where this is actually, and this was actually I was saying about the book, like, this is the crux of why I was like, wow, people really don't and this is not a dig on anyone. Like, I didn't understand immune diseases until I had to, right? And they're just not genetic. They're just not. Your immune system is not coded in your genes. And that doesn't mean, like, I don't mean that, like, everything is a little bit in your genes, right? So obviously your body affects things a little bit, but it's not even a lot coded in your genes. Like, your immune system is the immune system of someone living, here in Philadelphia. If I were born here in Philadelphia, the exact genetic copy of me, if I were born in a different place, my immune system would look wildly different, right? Because your immune system is designed to deal with whatever you're dealing with. Right. So in that same training ground, it's like saying, Japanese language is genetic, or like thinking that the reason all Japanese people speak Japanese is genetic. Like, it sounds right on its surface, at first blush, but then you're like, no, that makes no sense, right? That same kid, if they were born in, Finland, would speak Finnish. And it's exactly like that. Like, it's just not genetic. It's really about what exposures your body is getting and what your immune system learns to deal with. And then also what mistakes it can make because of what it's dealing with.
Got it. Okay. So for those of us that aren't going to go and read through that study, well, for those of us that are, what is the name of it? I think you said it's called
the LEAP study is the original one. There's on our website.
That can be found on your site.
So I like to think that the content on our website is really good. A lot of people have told me that it is quite good, but I have, again, spent 20 years in a career where the entire thing has been really about doing clinical research at a level that gets published in journals and changes, medicine, and then translating that into what a regular person who is not bothered to go to medical school would understand and make sense in their life, right? So I've been doing this for 20 years.
And for the lay mother.
Yes. So if you haven't seen, I like to speak in analogies that hopefully help people wrap their head around things.
I'm known in our house as the queen of analogies, so I appreciate it. We'll have to analogy battle sometime. If anyone wants to read the study, they can find it on your site. It's called the LEAP study. For those families that don't want to and want to wrap their head around this in a sentence or two, is it correct to say that the conclusion of that study was that we do need to be introducing these 7 or whatever it is, typically thought of as highly allergenic foods early, and early meaning between, by 6 to 10 months, you said as early as 4. Right. And then for how long are they buying your daily mix one time? Is this something that we're going to do for until when?
Yeah, so we make a lifetime mix, which is the powders in a jar because it's the most economical way to do it. And each jar has 4 months of servings in it. So again, you want to start between 4 and 6 months old whenever your child starts solid foods. So don't rush your kid to start these things before they're eating solid foods. That's the trigger. My baby's ready for solids, so now this is part of their solids diet. Okay, but starting by 6 months then, and continuing through ideally their first birthday. The difference is the change is around 10 months, a lot of kids can start to handle peanut butter. So we also make the products in a way that we do not, because again, as a parent, I do not think people should buy things more than they need to. So when your child is ready to transition to peanut butters and to scrambled eggs and to other things, by all means, please do feed them real food.
Right. Okay, gotcha. And then what could you say to the parent who's watching this who has a 10-month-old or a 12-month-old and is like, oh no, I didn't know.
I missed the boat. Sooner is always better than later. There was a great study done in Canada called the Child Study that showed that if you start by 12 months, it's still 4 times better than waiting till 18 months and 7 times better than waiting till 2 years. And, 18 months is still 3x better than waiting till, 2 years. So sooner is better than later.
Okay. Got it. Excellent.
I mean, again, and I want to clarify this. Is sooner is better than later, assuming the child does not have an allergy, right? So this does not mean that if your child has already developed an allergy at 10 months, that you should start feeding them these foods. If your child has an allergy, they will react to Lil Mixins because they are just the pure foods. But we want to feed these to children before they ever develop an allergy. But this is not a product to resolve an allergy or to be fed to a child that has already developed an allergy.
This is really all for prevention.
This is prevention, right.
Got it. Okay. So the last thing I would think parents might be wondering is that safety aspect. So what if I try to do early introduction and is it possible that my child would then have a reaction? What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's totally possible. It's totally possible. It's rare. And that's the whole reason we start early, because the odds of a child, the immune system isn't mature enough yet at 4 to 6 months, right? It hasn't hit that stage of development. So the odds of it having an allergy, or the child having an allergy, are much, much lower. Not impossible, but much, much lower. And the children who should be the most concerned are those with severe eczema. I mentioned earlier that eczema, food allergies, and asthma are all kind of the same disease. So eczema is a big sign that this child's immune system is already hyperactive. Right. And interestingly, the children with eczema also get the most benefit, right? Because if you let those children with eczema be, their odds are like 80% of developing a food allergy. So they get the most benefit from early allergen introduction, but they're also the most likely to potentially have a reaction. The thing you should know about children that are 4 to 6 months, again, is that they do not have very strong immune systems. And that's really critical because they are not capable of having a nasty, horrible allergic reaction. So this has also been studied, and there has never, like the children that show up to the ER with, what you're worried about, any parent is worried about, is like coughing and the breathing, that happens at ages 2 to 6. Okay. So 4 to 6 months old, they just can't, basically, it seems, like they develop hives, they vomit. And these are still things that you should deal with, that just still get them some Zyrtec. Do not use Benadryl. Benadryl should be thrown out of everyone's cabinets. No, it's actually, Benadryl is actually really, relatively speaking, a very dangerous medicine. And if you're looking for an antihistamine, every allergist will tell you now, like, that's an old drug and you should be using Zyrtec, or it's called children's cetirizine. Zyrtec is a much safer, better drug. You can give them some cetirizine and, take them to see their doctor.
Okay, got it. So parents don't need to be worried about the scary reaction that they've heard their best friend's older kid have. That's what I wanted to get across, because I know that sometimes prevents us, from doing these things. So the last thing I wanted to ask, I think you kind of touched on it already, is, are there warning signs of allergies that parents should be on the lookout for? Obviously, you mentioned how eczema and asthma are often tied in.
Yep. Yeah. So eczema, so asthma tends to develop later, around age 2 and above. Eczema tends to develop first. And you can see that as early as like 2 days out of the womb. And so the earlier this is the rule, is the earlier the onset of the eczema and the more severe the eczema is, meaning how hard is that eczema to control, the higher the likelihood also of developing food allergies. And again, because that's a direct correlation between how bad it is, right? Basically, how hyperactive is this kid's immune system in such an early age. So definitely, if you have a kid is severe, like weeping, horrible eczema, you should be talking to your doctor about it. Lil Mixins, we're actually working on some products that'll be coming out in the next 4 to 5 months, because the whole goal of this company is to stop allergies before they start. And that, in truth, actually starts in pregnancy. And so we have some new products coming out that have 10-year clinical data to show that we can drop the risk of eczema by 40 to 50% in children. And because if we can drive that eczema risk down, then we can also drive the food allergy risk down, right? So what we want to like, we've all learned this like Swiss cheese model. We want to like, layer in this ability to reduce eczema and then layer in the early allergen introduction and take, food allergies down to zero. And then in theory, if we can keep everyone's immune systems calm, we should also be able to reduce the rates of asthma later on too. That's not the goal of this company, because that's a whole other level of science, but I'm just saying.
Wow, you have a lot going on. It's very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to all of that. And thinking about it, from a sleep perspective, a lot of the families that we support, with sleep solutions, they're harder to implement if your kiddo is uncomfortable from eczema or isn't breathing well due to asthma. So it can really just encompass so much more than just the standard breathing, whatever.
Actually, when we came to you, my family came to you for sleep help. It was actually that, right? Like, there's so many things that we've realized in retrospect that we were trying to treat the symptom. Like, he was having trouble sleeping. We couldn't get him to sleep, but he was miserable all night. His stomach hurt like crazy. He had eczema. So like, no, I don't sleep well either, right? If I'm horribly sick. And as I've gone on this journey to learn more and more, and we've kind of gotten all his conditions in a much better place, we have, he sleeps great now. And all these other issues that we used to have are so much better. But, you were so helpful to us back then when we were like just tired, desperate parents trying to figure out how to get our kid to sleep through the night. And those skills were really helpful. And I don't think that if we had ever gotten to sleep, that we would have had the mental clarity to do any of this other stuff and figure out, what was going on.
Well, that's a very nice honor. That's awesome. Very, very cool. And I'm glad that all worked out. So this has been awesome. It's so eye-opening. So we do have a question coming in. Perfect timing. Anything we can do for baby for prevention of eczema, allergies, asthma while pregnant? So I know you just said in a few months you'll probably have.
Well, if you're pregnant, we have a product, and it's actually it's a probiotic with some other stuff in it that is, and again, this has been studied for over 10 years now. We have 10-year data on a randomized controlled study showing that we can drastically reduce the risk of eczema. And the way it works best when the mom starts taking it in her 3rd trimester, and then mom and baby take it together during the breastfeeding relationship. So we have a product coming out next month, October. No, that's 2 months from now. 2 months from now for the prenatal mother, and then in a couple months following that for the breastfeeding time period. And it's the only, because we're so committed to this, it's the only probiotic that does this. And you can only buy it this way, which is like there's 2 things in it, and the baby takes one and the mom takes one or the other, and one changes the mom's breast milk, and then the baby gets like the bacteria and stuff that eat that better breast milk. so that they sort of lay down a much healthier immune system for the child.
That's super, super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully
but before that, the best things a mom could do, honestly, are just a really good diet. Like a really healthy, clean diet will make sure that as your body's starting to produce breast milk and is getting ready for labor and everything else, will increase the odds. And sorry, and the one more important thing here is, if you can keep your own health, strong, and your vaginal health, and increase the odds that you have a antibiotic-free vaginal delivery, those are actually two things somewhat in your power that drastically change your child's risk of eczema and allergies. So again, everyone shouldn't fight for a vaginal delivery. The C-sections are there for a reason, but unnecessary C-sections and unnecessary use of antibiotics, again, antibiotics are there for a reason, can really, really harm your baby and basically pump them full of antibiotics just as they're starting to build their immune system, right? So if we can avoid those things, that's something mom has in her control, to try and get herself into a good state of health for labor and delivery, so that she sort of increases the odds of setting her child off on the right foot.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Thank you for the question. Hopefully that was helpful. So obviously we learned about each other a while ago, and I learned about your products. I just still feel like this is not on a lot of parents' radar. What do you think is you're obviously climbing an uphill battle here. What do you think is the challenge with getting this information's been available, like you said, back when you were struggling with your son? So what's going on that's making it so hard?
I think, we're the company's working on a lot of things. I think one of the challenges is doctors are humans too, right? So if we think about early adopters and late adopters, like I was the last to get an iPhone. Doctors are humans too. Some of them saw the study and immediately changed the way they started talking to parents, and some of them are just gonna do it more, later, and not ideal, but again, they're humans. I think, there was a lot of hesitancy. I think it was interesting to see just in the last year or so, all the articles on the bump.com and Pregnant Chicken and whatever else suddenly started talking about early allergen introduction. It was like some switch flipped, where everyone was like, okay, I guess this has been around long enough that I feel safe, stop talking about this. But I actually think this is moms telling other moms, right? You kind of have to wait until there's enough older moms that are like, yep, this is the right thing to do, that kind of thing. And again, I don't know how to stop shilling this, but that was sort of the idea behind the book, is actually I think the biggest challenge for people is that they have a very poor mental model of how these diseases happen. In fact, we don't have a mental model, right? Is immune diseases seem to just kind of come from nowhere, and they're scary and terrifying. But actually, and when, we all kind of have this working knowledge of cancer. It doesn't mean we have to be oncologists, but we understand, we've heard things like tumors, and we take chemotherapy and it shrinks tumors, and smoking can cause that. We have some baseline understanding that external things can cause changes in our bodies that make us sick, right? With cancer. And really, immune diseases are really similar to that. And I think most people tend to think of them like viruses or something, which just kind of come out of nowhere, but it's not like that. These immune diseases are cancers, and immune diseases are all called self diseases, which meaning the body making some sort of mistake and turning on itself. Right. And so they're very similar to cancers in the sense that actually a virus can trigger a cancer, right? Like HPV. And a virus, a viral illness can actually trigger immune diseases. And external exposures like smoking, interestingly, can trigger cancers of the lung, and it can also trigger asthma and, allergies. And pollution can do both things. It can trigger cancers, it can trigger allergies. So, or immune diseases. And so, I the goal is, I think that'll take a while, but, eventually people learn that bacteria are bad and they learn to wash their hands. So I know that we can happen.
Yeah, awesome. Well, definitely stick with your mission. And now everyone that watched tonight is more informed and can help spread the word. And I will try to keep doing the same. Before we wrap up, I do want to be mindful of your time and let you go. Anything else that you want parents, families to know that we did not get across yet?
No, I mean, I think you kind of covered everything. I just, the big takeaway here is that your child has a really, really high risk of food allergies, higher than almost, to be clear, there are more children in any given year that will develop a food allergy than blue eyes, because only 7% of children are born with blue eyes, but 8 to 10% develop food allergies. So if I want you to think about just how high the odds are, right? And then something as simple as allergen introduction can cut that risk by 80%. So again, when we think about the COVID vaccines and how excited we were about them, you know what else they do? Cut your risk by 80%. So I really think it's helpful for people to think about just how safe this is and how important it is to do, because the risk is super high of a lifelong chronic disease. We do not have any good cures for food allergies today. We have honestly, no really good treatments, and you can largely prevent them.
Well, and now we don't have to feel so helpless and have it be so scary, because
exactly,
there are things that we can do and early on that are going to cut that risk. So that's fantastic news for families.
Yeah, and we should think of it as empowering, right? Instead of, I would love to get away from this narrative of fear of food allergies and just think of it as like, you know what, this is something I can be proactive about and just deal and like attack head on. And then our family is not gonna deal with it. Like that's really the mindset.
That might be part of the ethical climate. I feel like our medical culture is very reactive instead of proactive. So it's this different mindset of like, hey, let's do something about it before it is even a possibility, which I think is fantastic. Excellent. Right. So lastly, I was going to ask if you had anything coming up. You already touched on that. So you have a book coming out. Remind us when we can look for that. Do we know what it will be?
Oh, we don't know what it's going to be called yet. It's with the publisher. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to talk about it, but it's too late. Nobody tell Sarah. It's coming a fall of 2022. These publishers work on a really long cycle, but they have to create a good product, and of course they have to fact check everything I'm saying in this, in this thing.
And your Daily Mix is coming out also in a couple of months.
The Daily Mix comes out next month. Next month, and so we're really excited about that. We've been working for years to make better and better products that really meet parents where they are, and I feel like this is kind of what people have been asking for. So that's coming out next month. And
now, before that comes out, is there one single one you'd have them start with?
Honestly, the Daily Mix that we have today, which covers peanut, eggs, and tree nuts all mixed together, is like pretty similar. I do, there's a value to we split it out so that you know exactly what cashew is. And the nice thing about the new Daily Mix is if your child does end up with, like, let's say a walnut allergy, you could still use 6 out of 7 days of it. You know what I mean? Which makes it more easier for people to use. And so, but the Daily Mix today is actually, it's like, we keep getting better as a company, but I would say it's an 80% solution, and the Daily Mix gets us to more like 100% solution.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And then the prenatal is
the prenatal comes out in October, and I'm really excited about that. And I'd love to connect with any parents that would be interested in trying it and learning more about it. I do think, again, that's going to be a lot of education, and I'm a glutton for punishment, I suppose. But I really feel like, look, I feel like we have to do the right thing, right? We have to give people the tools. When we know that these tools exist, how could I sleep at night if I'm not giving people the tools to deal with them?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then for everyone to keep tabs on that, tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find us is lilmixins.com. Many of our products are sold on Target.com and in Target stores. And the Daily Mix actually will start being sold in Targets come October 1st. But thanks. We have 4 products at Target already, but they're expanding our set there. And and of course Amazon, right? And you can buy anything on Amazon.
Of course. All right, wonderful. And just for anybody that's Lil, like little, like L Mixins. Excellent. Well, you are a wealth of information. I'm glad we found each other. I super appreciate your time tonight. I more than appreciate you flipping. Surprise, you're tonight, not next week.
No worries.
Evenings are perfect for some of our families and tough for others. So I know a lot of families are going to watch this on replay and fully benefit from
totally.
Keep with your mission. It's so super important. And I look forward to everything that you and Little Mixins has coming in the future.
Thanks. And if any parents have any questions later, or you're watching it later, feel free to reach out to hello@lilmixins.com. We get back to people really fast and try and answer every question really well. And there's actually a way on the website that you can text me, and I totally will text with people and answer your questions because, look, parenting is scary enough. So let's,
a very generous offer. I hope one day that it's such a big thing that you can't even personally do that.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think I offer it to people all the time, but then everyone just emails anyway. So then it's easy, but right. It's not so many people that take me up on the texting.
Well, I love that. I love that your son is doing well. I love that business is going well and that it's going to help so many families prevent something that we now know is preventable. So that's fantastic. Or at least reducing. I guess I shouldn't say preventable, but reduce the risk of incidents. Excellent. Thank you again for your time, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And all the sleep we're getting every night, we still thank you for that. So
wonderful. I will take some credit for that. I appreciate the shout out.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.